Further, Mahamati, the thesis, all things are unborn, is not to be maintained by the Bodhisattva Mahasattva as valid. Why? Of this thesis it is to be stated that anything of which something is asserted partakes thereby of the nature of being, and that the reason for this thesis is characterized with the quality of birth. While it is being asserted by the Bodhisattva Mahasattva that all things are unborn, the very assertion destroys his thesis. The thesis that all things are unborn acts against the one who holds it because it is born of the principle of mutuality. Even when this thesis of no birth is to be maintained within the extent of existence itself, the notion of no birth cannot hold itself in it, and the statement, the thesis, that all things are unborn is destroyed since it is dependent on the members of the syllogism. As regards the thesis maintaining the no-birth one of being and non-being, Mahamati, this thesis, to be valid, must be within the limits of existence itself. But there is no aspect of existence which can be regarded either as being or as non-being. If, Mahamati, the no-birth of all things is to be asserted by this thesis of no birth, the very attempt defeats the thesis itself. Point 2. Therefore, this thesis is not to be upheld. Because many faults come out in connection with the members of the syllogism, and because in these syllogistic members there is a mutual mixing up of reasons, this thesis is not to be upheld. 1. Literally, is not born. Single quote. 2. Pratyanayam, pratijna bhavati is omitted in the translation following Tang and Sung, as it does not add to the clearing up of the meaning. As with the thesis that all things are unborn, so with the thesis that all things are empty and have no self-nature. Neither is to be maintained by the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. But, Mahamati, this is to be pointed out by the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that things in their self-nature are like Maya, like a dream. For they are in one way perceived as existing and in another way are not perceived as such, and all things are thus seen in two ways, in accordance either with knowledge or ignorance. Let it be pointed out that all things are like Maya and a dream, except when the feeling of fear is aroused in the minds of the ignorant. Mahamati, the ignorant and the simple-minded are addicted to the views of being and non-being, and are liable to tremble at our teaching. Mahamati, let them not be frightened away from the Mahayana. So it is said. 48. There is no self-nature, no thought construction, no reality, no alaya vijnana. These, indeed, are so many discriminations cherished by the ignorant who like a corpse are bad logicians. 49. All things are unborn. This thesis is established by all the philosophers. But nothing whatever is ever born, no establishment is needed, things are all linked by causation. 50. All things are unborn. No such discrimination is made by transcendental knowledge. When a certain conclusion is made depending on a cause, there is no sound judgment in it. 51. As a hairnet is what is wrongly perceived by those who are dim-eyed, so existence discriminated as real is due to the wrong discrimination of the ignorant. 52. The triple world is no more than thought construction, there is no reality in its self-nature. By means of this thought-constructed reality, logicians go on discriminating. 53. Individual form, reality, thought construction. These are only a mental disturbance. Transcending all this, my sons will walk where there is no discrimination. 54. As in a mirage in the air, the thought of water is cherished where there is no water, so things are seen by the ignorant otherwise than by the wise. 55. The insight of the wise, who move about in the realm of imagelessness, is pure, is born of the triple emancipation, is released from birth and destruction. 56. Where all things are wiped away, even a state of imagelessness ceases to exist for the yogins. In the sameness of existence and non-existence, the fruit of wisdom is born to the wise. 57. How does existence cease to exist? How does the sameness take place? When the mind fails to understand the truth, there is disturbance inside, outside, and in the middle. With the cessation of the disturbance, the mind sees the sameness. 71. Further, Mahamati said, it is told by the Blessed One. Again, that true knowledge is gained independent of any object supporting it. And whatever statements one makes about it are no more than thought construction. And that as this thought construction is not to be seized as real. The seizing act of the seizer itself ceases, and when there is thus no seizing, knowledge which is known as discrimination no more evolves. Now, Blessed One, how is transcendental knowledge unobtainable? Is it unobtainable because our not recognizing the generality and individuality of things, their pluralities, their unities? Or is it unobtainable because such ideas as individuality, generality, multiplicity, and self-nature overpower one another? Or is it unobtainable because of the obstructions presented by a wall, a mountain, an earthwork, a rampart, or by earth, wind, water, or fire? Or because of remoteness or nearness? Or does the knowledge fail to obtain its object of cognition because of the imperfection of the sense organs due to youth, age, or blindness? If, Blessed One, knowledge was not obtainable because our not recognizing individuality, generality, unity and plurality, then, Blessed One, such cannot be transcendental knowledge. It is to be called ignorance, for in spite of the fact that objects to be known are before us, we do not know them. Again, if knowledge is unobtainable because such ideas as individuality, generality, multiplicity, and self-nature overpower one another, such is ignorance. Blessed One, it is not transcendental knowledge. Where there is something to be known, Blessed One, knowledge evolves. Where there is nothing, none evolves. Knowledge is possible only where there is a correspondence with that which is known. Again, if knowledge is unobtainable because of the obstruction presented by a wall, mountain, earthwork, rampart, or by earth, water, wind, or fire, or due to farness or nearness, or on account of the imperfection of the sense organs as in the case of an infant, the aged, and the blind, such as is unattainable is not transcendental knowledge. It is ignorance, for the object to be known is there but the knowing faculty is lacking. Said the Blessed One. Mahamati, such knowledge as is unobtainable is not ignorance, such is transcendental knowledge. Mahamati, it is not ignorance. It is not because of the deeper sense that I say this. But when we know that there is knowledge gained independent of any supporting object, whatever statements we make about it are no more than thought constructions. That transcendental knowledge is unobtainable is due to the recognition that there is nothing in the world but what is seen of the mind. And that these external objects to which being and non-being are predicated are non-existent. As this knowledge is unobtainable, there is no evolving of knowing and known, and as thus the triple emancipation is realized, there is unattainable knowledge which is transcendental. But logicians being under the habit energy of the wrong reasoning which has been carried on since beginningless time as to existence and non-existence are unable to know all this. And, while not knowing it, they are concerned with such notions as external objects, substances, forms, indications, existence and non-existence. And yet they declare that the cessation of discrimination is the state of the mind only. As they are tenaciously clinging to the thought of an ego soul and all that belongs to it, they are really unable to understand what is meant by the doctrine of mind only, and go on discriminating knowing and known. And because of their discriminating knowing and known, they think of things as existent and non-existent, and declaring that transcendental knowledge is unobtainable, abide in nihilism. So it is said. 58. If transcendental knowledge fails to see an objective world which lies before it, such is ignorance and not knowledge. This teaching belongs to the logicians. 59. If transcendental knowledge fails to see, though various obstructions far and near, its own unique object that does not present itself as an object, such as to be called wrong knowledge. 60. If transcendental knowledge fails to know, on account of defective senses such as infancy, old age, and blindness, its own object which is present, such as to be called wrong knowledge. 72. Further, Mahamati, the ignorant and simple-minded keep on dancing and leaping fascinated with their wrong reasonings, falsehoods, and self-discriminations, and are unable to understand the truth of self-realization and its discourse in words. Clinging to the external world which is seen of the mind itself, they cling to the study of the discourses which are a means and do not know properly how to ascertain the truth of self-realization which is the truth unspoiled by the fourfold proposition. Said Mahamati, Blessed One, it is just as you say. Pray tell me, Blessed One, about the characteristic features of the truth of self-realization and about the discourses on it, whereby I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas in future time, understanding what they are, may keep ourselves away from the wrong logicians such as the philosophers and those who belong to the vehicles of the Sravaka and the Pratyekabuddha. Said the Blessed One. Then, Mahamati, listen well and reflect well within yourself. I will tell you. Certainly, Blessed One. Said Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva and gave ear to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said this to him. Mahamati, there are two forms of teaching the truth attained by the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones of the past, present, and future. They are the teaching by discourses, and the teaching by the establishment of self-realization. What is meant by the studying of the discourses is this, Mahamati. There are various materials and canonical texts and discourses by which sentient beings are taught according to their dispositions and inclinations. What then is the truth of self-realization by which the yogins turn away from discriminating what is seen of the mind itself? There is an exalted state of inner attainment which does not fall into the dualism of oneness and otherness, of bothness and not bothness, which goes beyond the sata, manas, and manavijnana, which has nothing to do with logic, reasoning, theorizing, and illustrating, which has never been tasted by any bad logicians, by the philosophers, Sravakas, and Pratyekabuddhas, who have fallen into the dualistic views of being and non-being. This I call self-realization. This, Mahamati, is what characterizes the truth of self-realization and discoursing on it, and in this you and the other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are to discipline themselves. So it is said. 61. I have two forms of teaching the truth. Self-realization and discoursing. I discourse with the ignorant and disclose self-realization to the yogins. 73. At that time again, Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva said this to the Blessed One. It was told at one time by the Blessed One, the Tathagata, the Arhat, the fully enlightened one, that the Lokayataka who is skilled in various forms of incantation and in the art of eloquence is not to be honored, adored, and reverently attended upon. For what one gains from such devotions is worldly enjoyments and not the Dharma or truth. For what reason is this said? Blessed One, that by devoting ourselves to the Lokayataka who is skilled in varieties of incantations and in the art of eloquence, worldly enjoyments are gained but not the Dharma or truth.